Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today we're taking a look at the brand new Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs DLC for Total War Warhammer 3. After a very long wait, the game is finally getting a new bit of content, and, as with anything, it comes with good bits and not so good bits alike. Just a heads up that I received a free key from the folks at Creative Assembly so I could showcase the DLC on the channel and get this review out, and if you'd like to grab the DLC for yourself, doing so at the link in the pinned comment down below is a great way to do so while supporting the channel. Naturally, neither of these have any impact on my review, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be very obvious, especially later on in this video. Now, with no more time to waste, let's see if the Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs hits the mark, or if it comes up a little short. We'll discuss the pricing and content quantity situation a little later in the video. I know that's a hot topic, further fueled by some of the statements made when the discrepancy was first revealed, but I like to start my reviews focusing on the positives, unless there aren't any at all, and it would be very unfair to claim that to be the case here. The Chaos Dwarfs DLC brings with it 3 legendary lords and a legendary hero. That translates into 3 different starting positions in the Realm of Chaos map and Immortal Empires map alike, with the former including a narrative thread to follow along from chapter to chapter. The 3 starts are quite close to each other in the Realm of Chaos, all things considered, especially when you compare it to the Champions of Chaos DLC or the Ogre Kingdoms DLC as well, though the Immortal Empire starts do have them a bit more spread out, meaning slightly different starting conditions and challenges. Naturally, each of the lords have slightly different starting armies and abilities and quest battles, etc., but apart from the usual differentiators between lords of the same faction, they play quite similarly. The faction's campaign map mechanics themselves are quite fun though, and as a result of how the economy is stressed for the Chaos Dwarfs, you'll find yourself having a few more options than usual when conquering territories. Every time you capture a settlement, be it minor or major, you'll have the option of occupying it as either a factory or an outpost if it's a minor settlement, or those 2 options and a third as a tower to be your provincial capital. These 3 all have different options and different pros and cons, so there's a bit of more thought put into the process of conquest here as you have to figure out what your economy most needs. Now, on the topic of economy, you're balancing 4 separate pools of resources here: the traditional treasury, laborers, raw materials, and armaments. While the treasury is needed to recruit troops and build most buildings, laborers are needed to produce raw materials at mines and quarries. In turn, raw materials are needed to build certain buildings, research certain technologies, and produce armaments at factories, which in turn are needed to build advanced military buildings and gain access to advanced units, to research certain technologies, and to engage with the Hellforge, where you spend armaments to increase your unit recruitment limits and to unlock upgrades for your units based on what categories they fall under. The Hellforge is the most interesting faction mechanic in this DLC, in theory, in concept, and in execution, even if, as a player, your engagement with it is only a matter of a few clicks every handful of turns. The manufacturing prowess of the Chaos Dwarfs is one of their things, so to speak, so it's nice to see special attention being paid to the idea of needing to bolster production of equipment for a certain type of unit or another before you're able to actually field more of them in your empire. It's a nice touch, and it adds an extra layer of strategizing for the player as you think about your preferred playstyle, what category of unit you need more of more quickly, and what upgrades you want to chase after in particular, and for which units, though it comes at an increased cost, the more valuable it would be to you. Choices that give you benefits have both positive and negative consequences, which is something I'm always hoping for in these types of games. See, while these upgrades can be swapped in and out as needed, with cooldowns between swaps, you need to be wary of the upkeep cost in armaments when you have certain upgrades active, multiplied by the number of units using said upgrade across your empire. So, not only are the more powerful upgrades more expensive to begin with, but the more value you glean from them in the form of having more units out there benefiting from them, the more expensive they become. It's a constant flow of trying to produce more raw materials to produce more armaments and acquire more laborers to produce more raw materials in the first place. Things get interesting on that front too, as you balance the number of laborers available within a province against the number needed for efficient operation at that province, and it's all represented by this workload number changing based on the buildings that are active in said province. Typically, the higher output capacity a province has for raw materials, the higher its workload is, and the more laborers it needs to operate effectively. Working below capacity is an option, of course, though it does come at the cost of aforementioned efficiency, so You'll use your labor economy panel to move laborers around or otherwise make sure they're going to the right place in the first place, making sure a massive labor pool in a single province isn't causing too much trouble to your control in the region. Labor can be used to acquire additional benefits too, converting them, so to speak, into various resources or increased control for a few turns. And you can also spend laborers to immediately complete the construction of a building when you find yourself in desperate need of the new structure. Even when you're not spending laborers for one thing or another, there's a constant reduction of laborers in your provinces, determined in part by control in the various provinces, with the number draining more quickly the lower your control is. To combat that, you'll constantly need to fight battles and conquer cities to keep more laborers coming in, or you'll need to buy them through the fairly familiar trade convoy system that the Chaos Dwarfs have access to. This is basically the same thing as Cathay's trade convoy system, except for the fact that different destinations have different resources they're willing to buy and sell. Nothing to write home about per se, but it's funny for me to see it because when the base game came out, I'd said it would be nice for more factions to engage with trade in this more complex and involved manner, and here we are. I think it's a good approach to trade, and again, I'd like to see it become the norm rather than an outlier. On the topic of outliers, though, the Tower of Czar is a campaign mechanic that lies outside the purview of the resources we've discussed so far, relying instead on conclave influence to unlock increasingly powerful buffs across multiple tiers, all the way up to confederation of other factions at the top. There's an intra-faction conflict element here, as seats in the tower can be usurped, stealing buffs from fellow Chaos Dwarf factions, and some of the buffs are quite juicy as far as giving you momentum on the campaign map, so it's a fairly simple system that provides fun results in single player, with room for a bit of competition among friends if playing in multiplayer. The unit roster feels near complete, with a few notable omissions such as the Chaos Siege Giant, but there are a handful of regiments of renown, a wide array of Chaos Dwarfs, laborers, and hobgoblin units alike, and a new lore of magic to boot. The Chaos Dwarfs are fun to play on the battlefield, even for somebody who typically dislikes the slower, more lethargic-feeling factions. There are enough fast movers in this army, and the magnificence of their gunpowder and war machines is unparalleled. Visually, the army looks stunning, but I expect nothing less from the talented artists at Creative Assembly, though mechanically I have to wonder where the gaps are in this army. They have ranged capabilities, they have artillery, they have melee, they have armor, they have shields, they have leadership, they have magic, and, despite being dwarfs, they have speedy units too. I can't speak to their balance in multiplayer yet, but they definitely feel like quite the powerhouse in single player, so they're fun to lead in battle, especially when you've kitted them out with the right upgrades from the Hellforge and Manufactory. They suffer the typical AI shenanigans, though, particularly with regards to your gunpowder units, which is quite a shame since they're among the most fun early units you get access to. When everything's working, though, you can expect a great time with chaff laborer units, fast-moving bull centaurs, and heavy-hitting range units to whittle down and obliterate your foes. All in all, despite my kudos, the Chaos Dwarf DLC falls just short of my expectations. The campaign map narrative isn't as good as some of the best we've seen, and though the campaign map mechanics are intriguing, they're a little shallow at times with what they ask of the player. The Hellforge is neat, but everything else feels pretty bog standard because the novelty wears off very quickly. This isn't a comment I'm making after playing 100 hours of the DLC. Only a handful, really. The tools at your disposal on the battlefield are fun to see in action, and even though there are some notable units missing, it's a very full roster for the most part. Though let's not forget the fact that we're short an entire Legendary Lord, which means we're short 2 added start positions between the Realm of Chaos and Immortal Empires, another skill tree, another set of faction and lord mechanics, and additional quest battles, and their associated items for use in single and multiplayer alike. So you can see how the Chaos Dwarf DLC comes short of expectations, and then there's the problem of the price. There are usually 2 approaches to the economic changes that the world is currently going through. On the one hand, you raise the price of your product to match inflation, or, on the other, you decrease the value of the product while keeping the price the same. The latter is called shrinkflation, and we tend to see shrinkflation with food in particular. A chocolate bar that's 10% smaller but costs the same as it used to. What Creative Assembly have done here is they've increased the price of the DLC while also decreasing what you get in it, with only 3 legendary lords who all play pretty similarly despite their cleverly worded claims implying how unique and different they'd be, justifying the price tag in a way that really rubs me the wrong way. Don't lie to your customer. Don't treat them like they're stupid. It's not a good look, and it's insulting at best. Either way, CA are double dipping here, plain and simple, charging you more for less, and while I'd be perfectly okay with that if the extra cost was being passed on to their employees with everybody getting raises to match inflation, I'm fairly confident that that's not the case. It doesn't help that they're opening yet another studio in Newcastle, announced just last month, which isn't typically done when you're struggling financially as a business. Now, I'm no MBA, but something doesn't track, and this just feels like a clever way to increase the price of DLC and make the new price point and the new lowered quantity of content the new norm. Let's not forget that less content now also means there's more content saved for future DLC to charge you once more. So it's not just double dipping, but in future it could end up being triple dipping or even quadruple dipping. Again, to be clear, I wouldn't mind as much if the new price point didn't also come with reduced content, but with the two happening hand in hand, I can safely say that I would not buy this DLC even with the 10% launch discount, where it costs about a third the price of the base game entirely. I'd wait until the price dropped to a bit more of a reasonable level. At the end of the day, the decision is of course yours and yours alone, but for a DLC that does a good job of meeting the bare minimum expectations and doesn't go above and beyond, it's a hard pass in my eyes, with us getting the worst of both worlds as far as price and content are concerned. That's obviously again up to each individual. Different folks draw the value for money line at different points, but normalizing this new price point means it'll likely become the standard moving forward. I'm just here to try and help informed customers get informed. I get the DLC for free, and it's worth that price tag for sure, which is why there's a Let's Play on the channel right now. But if I had to pay for it, not a chance. If you'd still like to grab the DLC and check the Chaos Dwarfs out for yourself, remember you can use the link in the description and pinned comment down below to support the channel as you buy. I'd love to know your thoughts on the DLC as a whole, as well as the combination of inflation and shrinkflation that we're seeing here. Are you planning on picking it up right away, or are you holding off for a sale? Either way, I hope this review helped you make a call with regards to the Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs DLC. If it did, consider hitting the like button on your way out, and for more strategy gaming news, reviews, previews, let's plays, and more, you might want to consider subscribing to the channel too. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly, and of course a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.